Give me liberty and give me Annette.
Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where I talk about the Constitution, history, politics, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. You can find this podcast on AnnetteTalks.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. And if you want to see what we look like, go to YouTube, youtube.com/Annette Talks. And today we're going to be talking about the Libertarian platform, and my good friend D.K. Williams is going to try and talk us into voting Libertarian in November.
Nah, I'm just going to try to explain where we're coming from. Everybody can take information and digest it as they will.
Darn it, I was hoping for a sales job. So as many of you may know, DK's been on the show before a few times, and DK is an attorney and a card-carrying libertarian, right?
I am.
And you actually ran for office yourself one time, didn't you?
Yeah, but even before that, I was on the Libertarian Party of Colorado's board of directors. I guess that's what they call it. I was the legislative director, and then I was state chair. This is like 10 or 12 years ago.
Right.
And yes, then I ran for RTD district. That's a nonpartisan race, so letters aren't next to your name. But came in second out of 4 on that one.
Sweet.
And then ran for state attorney general and got 6.2% of the vote, 120,000 votes on no money. So that was cool. Yeah.
Actually not bad for a Libertarian Party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
got to go there and talk to people. So it was cool.
Well, and so that it's nice that you've got some experience and so you know what it's like to run on the ticket and not on the ticket, and you're very familiar with the platform. And you also have a podcast of your own.
Yeah, I love that. It's and that's what we've talked about before on like some Supreme Court cases or constitutional issues. I do one called The Law with D.K. Williams. It is through Speakeasy Ideas. So you can go to speakeasyideas.com/The Law and you'll see the podcast there. Just one came out yesterday on a Supreme Court case from earlier this term, came out in April. And working on the one for next week, which will be the U.S. Supreme Court's decision about the Electoral College, which I've covered pretty extensively in some earlier ones. So yeah, they've done a lot of stuff here in the past month, and so I'll be doing those here on a weekly basis in the next several months. So check those out. And the best way to keep up with it, if you're on Twitter, go to The Law DKW or at The Law DKW on Twitter, and whenever anything new comes out or some news is out there, I will tweet from there and you'll be on the loop. So yeah, check that out. Let me know what you think. That would be awesome.
Awesome. And I can attest for the fact that the podcast is fun. It's easy listening. A lot of times you think Supreme Court might be kind of dry. I mean, certainly the decisions are, but you do the heavy lifting for us. You actually read the case and then tell us what it's about. And your episodes are usually about 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, in that range. Yeah. Yep. None of them are longer than an hour, and I think only one of them gets close to that. So yeah, I try to keep them in at 30, 40 minutes.
And I really think it's every citizen's duty to keep up with what the Supreme Court is doing.
Yeah.
Like we tend to get micro-focused on, what's the president doing? And that's just one piece of the puzzle. So I'm glad you're out there doing that for us.
Thank you. I enjoy it. And what really got me started on it, or one of the main things, was hearing people talk on the radio or on the news about a case and saying things about it, either positively or negatively, that aren't in the case. I mean, it's clear they have not read it and they're talking about it. So I try to encourage people, if they're really interested in one of these, to read it. Don't just listen to me. Read it. And I always have a link to the case. So if anybody ever wants to do that, it's easy to find. They can go right to it and read it for themselves. And I'm clear. I'm telling you what I think is important about it, what my thoughts on it. But there's no substitute for reading it yourself if you're into it that much. So I try to make that easy. And I emphasize that. And just one other thing about reading actual documents. When Governor Polis here in Colorado came out with his most recent order, I heard people talking all about what it did and what it didn't do. Again, clearly they had not read it. So that's the type of thing. I will find the actual order, tweet it out so people can look at it themselves and not be relying on hearsay and innuendo and things from the media, social media, even worse. People are saying things as fact that simply are not. Original sources, check them out. It's important.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I found it on your website because I saw it.
All right, awesome.
You posted it on Facebook and I went and looked it up for myself and I said, this is doesn't talk about outdoors, and it looks
Right. No, you do not have to wear a mask outdoors.
No.
I mean, if you can socially distant. I guess if you're like in a concert and people are jammed up against you, but that's what it actually says.
Right. You're right. All right. So to dive in here, I posted on Facebook the other day that I was going to be doing this interview with you. And I had several questions from viewers and listeners. And so I wanted to cover a few of those. And actually, even before we go there, I want to give everyone my take on this election and where I'm coming from on it. And to me, it's almost like there's no good option. I feel like it's just, it's all bad. I'm not a huge Trump supporter. I don't hate him. I take him like any other politician. Some of the things he does, I like. Some of the things he does, I don't like. And so I'm not rabidly for or against him. One of my big concerns is if he does get reelected is that these mobs, these riots are going to get much, much worse, because part of their goal, or one of their main goals, is to get him out of office. So that's one of my big concerns, just because we have already so much chaos going on, but that's a big concern. Now, that's not going to be the thing that drives my vote, but it's a big concern. And then, of course, you have Biden, who is going to take the goals of the mob and further them. So that's obviously not the answer. And so I feel like, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because we do have a third option. I'm sure there'll be a few other
there'll be
options
more
on there. But so I was actually having a discussion with my brother-in-law about this, and we've both sort of been flirting with libertarianism for quite some time. And at the end of this podcast, I'm going to give what I would like to see as a scenario down the line. It won't happen this election, but down the line. So with that, let's dig into why you think we should vote Libertarian, or what you would like to present to us as your case for Libertarianism. And so, but we're going to start with the elephant in the room, and it's always the biggest question that comes up when people talk about, whether to vote for the Libertarian candidate. And that is, you're going to split the vote, and you're going to take the votes away from my party, and then my party won't get elected because Libertarian took the vote.
Right.
What's your answer to that?
It's funny. I've never heard that. And so I'm not quite sure. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, what?
Yeah. The notion that, if somebody's like the Libertarians, the notion that we can steal someone's votes is problematic, right? You cannot steal something that belongs to you. So every individual's vote belongs to themselves. So if I vote for X instead of Y, I'm not stealing Y's vote, right? That's not even how it works, right? So there's no stealing of votes. Votes belong to the individual. They get to use them how they see fit. And frankly, more than 40% of the eligible voters in the United States don't even vote at all. So I think one thing that third parties do, and particularly the Libertarian Party, is they largely speak to that audience that's not voting at all, the 40%, because they're like, for whatever reason, they're not motivated to vote for one of the two major parties. And often we provide them a reason to do that. So we're not, in any sense of the word, taking a vote from anyone. We're providing people an opportunity to express how they feel. And usually what we will hear is that we take, doing the air quotes for those that aren't watching on YouTube, votes from Republicans. Well, the numbers don't back that up. In 2016, when Gary Johnson ran, and I know specifically they did this in Colorado with the polling, that, and imagine this, I mean, whenever somebody just instinctively says something about, oh, you're just taking votes from the Republicans, I'm like, oh, the anti-drug war party, the pro-immigration party, the pro-choice, and that's not officially a position of the Libertarian Party, but mostly, the anti-war party, the anti state police party, we're taking votes from the Republican. Why the hell would we be doing that? Why would anybody vote for us? Because those are all things that the Republican Party, generally speaking, are on the other side of. So we're not taking votes from anybody. And the other issue is that plurality voting, which is what we have just about everywhere in the United States. There are exceptions, especially on some local levels. That is really the problem, because let's say you've got 5 people on your ballot. You've got the 2 major parties, Republican, the Democrat, and other minor parties, including the Libertarian Party. And some people might think, you know what, I really want to vote for this 5th party on this list, but I know that person is not going to win, not a snowball chance in hell, right? But that's who I really like. So instead of expressing my actual political opinion, I'm going to vote for someone who can win, again, using air quotes. So that is something like Democrats talk about all the time, about disenfranchising people.
Mm-hmm.
That's disenfranchisement right there. The effect of it is, and only allowing the 2 major parties to debate in, say, the presidential election. That's disenfranchisement right there, excluding opposition. And a way to get around that is that one choice compromise. There are several ways to get around it. There are alternative voting methods. And I recommend a book called Gaming the Vote by William Poundstone. He's not a political guy as far as I know. He's a mathematician, a stats guy, and game theory guy. And he explores some of the more some of the more popular options, instead of this, all right, there's 5 people on the ballot. You vote for one, you have to decide if you want to vote for who you really want to vote for, or somebody that can, quote unquote, win. One of the ways to do it is what's called approval voting. There are places that do this, private organizations, even in some city council levels, you can do this. You look at your ballot, 5 people on it, you look at the first guy, and you look at each one independently of the other one. So you go, this first guy, would I approve of him as president or not? And you say, no, I would not. This guy's horrible. No. Next guy, would I approve of him? No. Next guy, yeah, I could approve of that person in this office. Then the next one, no, I could approve of that person too. So let's say you vote, and even the third one, maybe. Let's say the third one, yeah, I can approve of that person. But 2, no, I do not approve of whatsoever. So you've approved of 3 of the 5. Everybody does that on their ballot. Whoever gets the most votes, approval votes, wins the election. So the most, or the person who gets the most thumbs up from the most people wins. So you could have somebody who gets 62% of approval would beat someone with 55% approval. That makes sense, I think. I submit that makes sense to do it that way. And some local elections give you a great example of this. Like in Aurora, big city suburb next to Denver, at this point, it was probably 8 years ago, but they had a mayoral election. 6 people were on it, and they didn't even have a runoff. So whoever got the most votes out of those 6 was going to be the mayor. And the winner got literally like 32% of the vote, right? So that means potentially out of the 6 people on that ballot, 60-some% had that guy as their absolute last choice.
Yeah.
But because 32% of the people voted, which is more than anybody else got, right? He became the mayor. With an approval voting system, you don't have that problem. Somebody is going to get 50%, right? Most likely, mathematically, if everybody hates everybody, they won't. But that's a whole nother issue. That's about quality of candidates, not how we count the votes.
Right. Well, I've often thought there needed to be a none of the above option, because when so many bad candidates are put up that you can't vote your conscience on any of them. Right. Then a none of the above, just to send a message. Yeah. So to me, the libertarian vote might almost be that this time around. Yeah, sure. Because I don't like either of the candidates for the main parties. It's like, okay. So obviously then you're talking about changing the voting system, which is not going to happen before the next presidential election. No. And I don't want to get too much into Jo Jorgensen. She's the presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party. Correct. This time around. We're just going to assume that she would follow the party platform. And so we'll spend our time talking about the party platform. And come back again to why it's a good idea this time around, when we still have the voting system that we do, to vote for Joe. And so some of the questions that I got are ones that I'm curious about as well. And one of them, the first one was, this person wanted an explanation about the open borders agenda. and whether libertarians are open borders, and whether, a presidential candidate would be an open borders person.
Right. Let me, before I jump into that, I got a very specific response. The plurality voting system, which is what we have now, and I've talked about one alternative voting method. The people in charge of that are the two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats at some level. And it's not always the libertarian, again, making air quotes around stealing elections. In Florida, when George W. Bush beat Al Gore with the whole hanging chads and all of that, irrespective of the vote counting, Nader got a significant number of votes. And a lot of the Democrats are like, if I'll censor myself. You people, if you Nader people had just done what we told you to do and voted for Gore, Gore would have beat Bush in Florida. He gets the electoral college votes and he wins. So it goes both ways if we're looking at the two major parties. You were going to tell us about Johnson in 2016. Yeah, Johnson took more votes from the Democrat largely because in 2016 in Colorado, legalization of marijuana was on the ballot. You had a lot of people coming out to vote for that. And that was one of Gary Johnson's big things, right? So a lot of those people who otherwise wouldn't have voted at all voted for Johnson. If you pressed them on it, they would have said, well, I prefer a Democrat generally. So it took votes from the Democrat there as well, right? And also there is a big L libertarian, which is the party, the organization. There's small L libertarian, which is the philosophy. There are a lot of people that are small L libertarians that have nothing to do with the party. So it's always important to distinguish those things. And as I pointed out on social media one time, same thing with Black Lives Matter. That's an idea that, yes, Black Lives Matter just as much as everybody else's do. Then there's the self-proclaimed Marxist organization who co-opted that name. Right. Those are different things. And it's important to know which one you're talking about. So just like with big L libertarian, small L libertarian, different things, same words. Well, you know what? That takes me to another question. Oh, we haven't gotten to open borders yet. I know. We're gonna get there. There's so all right. Fire away. Why do you think a lot of the small L libertarians aren't joining the big L party? And that takes us to is the Libertarian Party by its very nature ever going to be organized enough to really put together a solid campaign and get the money behind it? Again, it's the problem is one of them is ballot access, because some states it's very hard to get on the ballot. Colorado is not. There are going to be like 12 candidates for president on the Colorado ballot, which is great. I have no problem with that. Some places it's very hard. And so that's an issue that if you can't get on the ballot, obviously you're not going to get any votes, right? And the organization isn't the issue. The issue is, there's several, but anytime you are on the fringe of the Overton window, which you guys probably know what we're talking about, we're way over here, we're trying to move the window, you're going to have people that are by definition way out there, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the conversation. And some people don't want to be associated with people that are way out there. That's a perfectly logical decision to make. And so there's lots of other ways you can try to affect the United States of America, your local government, by doing things that have nothing to do with politics. Right. So if you want to write, speak, all kinds of things you can do to advance the cause of limited government or constitutional government or whatever your phrase is, you can do it outside the political party. And so the Libertarian Party is one tool. And some people prefer to use the hammer. Some people like to use the screwdriver, depending on the projects that they're involved with. I was afraid you're going to say sickle. No, we're pretty much opposed to that one. Yeah. So I don't think it's a matter of ballot access. It's a matter of being kept out of the officially sanctioned debates, because maybe people will disagree with this. There is an oligarchy, and that oligarchy wants the two parties to be in control. Mm-hmm. For example, when you look at donations to presidential candidates, like when the Obama years, he got just as much money from Wall Street as the Republican did. And most of those big Wall Street firms gave money to both sides because they don't care.
Right.
They want one of them to win, and whoever wins, they gave money to. So,
Right.
hey, listen to us when we come calling. And the more options are available, the harder it is for the people to control, the people with the money to control what's going on. I mean, there's a whole idea of regulatory capture, which is basically the organizations that are being regulated own the regulators, which is what happens. And so
Right.
the industry makes the regulations to govern them.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
they can't do that if they can't control the people that are putting together the regulators. So there is a system that is opposed to any outside interference,
Right.
and we're fighting that as part of it.
Yeah.
And so letting people realize that just because you're given two bad choices, you don't have to accept them. Because if you do keep accepting two bad choices, you're going to keep getting two bad choices.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I think your NOTA idea, NOTA, none of the above, is good, because then your vote's not going to that oligarchy, that duopoly, the people
Right.
in control. You're saying, I vote against you. And so when the winner ends up with getting 40%, that does have an effect on delegitimizing that winner. And so the more people that vote against one of the top two parties, the less power they have. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, this isn't going to be,
Yeah.
a snap of the finger. It's not Thanos with his glove, right? So every vote that you take away from the duopoly is a vote towards getting something done differently. Some people love Biden. Some people love Trump. Cool. You're fine. You're not interested. I get it.
Mhm.
And so, but a lot of people aren't. And there are options. There are other things to do other than to give your permission, because that's what a vote is. You're like, I sanction this. I sanction Trump. I sanction Biden if you vote for either one of them. I give my permission for that person to be in control. I'm acknowledging that I like that because I'm giving you my vote, which is what a vote does. And by doing that, you're perpetuating it. You're saying it's okay that this restaurant is only going to serve either tripe or chitlins. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
And as long as I keep accepting that, guess what their menu is going to be? It's the same thing because I'm buying it. So it is a problem that I think Americans have to get out of their head, that they only have two options. And I mean, I just can't help but think about the founding. Our founders bought a system they didn't like. It wasn't like, well, what are you going to do? You know, George is the king. I can't really, maybe, you know what, we can like send them some letters and ask them to do something differently. You know, or maybe that other guy would be a better king. No, they got rid of the entire system.
Right.
And it wasn't most Americans. Most Americans just wanted to do their job, right? They just wanted to farm. They just wanted to sell their stuff in their shop. They didn't have that drive to change it. They just wanted to be left alone much as possible, which I think is something that's going on now. So it doesn't take a majority to change the entire world. It takes people that can get enough momentum to change it.
Right.
And so we are saying, when we vote for Libertarian, and I think Greens or whoever, when they're doing it, they're saying we are not part of this system. We are fighting this system. And we are not going to give our sanction to it by taking one of the two major parties' choices that have been put upon us, when you don't give us any, you don't let our guy get up there to talk to them.
Mhm.
You are legally keeping them out.
So
and
you're
so,
saying
of course,
it's a protest vote in a way.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like my
Absolutely.
option C, none of the above. I don't like who you put up there.
Correct.
So I'm going to, because I will always vote, but that doesn't mean I always want to vote for one of those two.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And that's, and we're out there. I get it. We're trying to change things. We're not happy with the current choices. And the example I use with Republicans is just go to usdebtclock.org, I think.
Oh gosh, especially now.
That never changes.
Yeah.
When people talk about, we need Republicans to rein in government and be financially responsible. If you really believe that, you aren't looking at it. You've been told that since you were a kid. So you just spew that out like it's true, but it's not.
Right.
I mean, for 2 years, Trump and the Republicans control both houses of Congress. The U.S. debt got worse. So, you're cool with that, fine.
Yeah.
But don't pretend that Republicans are financially responsible at the federal level, because you're just deluding yourself.
Well, that was one of my big problems that I had when Trump actually signed these stimulus bills for this whole.
Right.
The other thing that comes to mind when we're talking about this, and some people are going to get really ticked because this topic is so divisive, but the whole idea of masks, and if you're out and everyone's wearing a mask, there's a huge pressure on you to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And so before it was a mandate here, I would go to Target and not wear one, and I would have to try really hard to not care and not look around and not feel like I'm the only one here. Because part of me said, well, if I'm the only one not wearing one, when someone else comes along and wants to not wear one, they're going to see me and be like, oh, I'm not the only one anymore. So part of the reason I did it was so other people would feel the freedom to make their own darn choice.
Right.
Right. I don't do it now because it's mandated, and I don't want, I'm not going to hassle Target because this is not their choice.
Right.
This is governor, but we have to be willing to go against the tide, and that's one of my problems with masks is that it encourages everyone to just go along.
Right.
And I don't think that's healthy in an open society.
Right.
I just don't.
I agree.
And it's much more important that we maintain an open society where we have the ability to make individual choices than it is to try and contain this virus that's not going to kill 99.99 whatever percent of us.
Right.
So anyway, I had to say it.
Yeah. No. Good. It's not. I hope people have seen the movie 28 Days Later. There's a thing called the rage virus in that turns everybody basically into a zombie. Oh, you're not dead. This isn't the rage virus.
28 days later now.
28 Days Later with Cillian Murphy, who is great. If everybody watches Peaky Blinders, he's in that. Okay. He's the lead guy in 28 Days. So I think it's a great example. Even if you're legitimately concerned about getting this or other people getting this and people getting sick and possibly dying, you can still see how fear is used by people in control to maintain their power and to expand their power. Yep. Even if you think it's legitimate. All right, let's just say you think all of this is legitimate. I think you can still look at it and see how they're using fear to keep their power and grow it, more specifically, grow their power. And the media with their headlines. A headline is, 2,000 people die is dramatic and people will more likely to click on it than something that says 99% of the people are fine.
Right.
Both of those things can be true, right?
Right.
But they're going to pick the headline to get you to click on it, which is going to be more dramatic and fearful. So there is money in fear and there's power in fear, even if you think all of this is legitimate, which I don't, because the risk isn't that great compared to, there's probably been 25 public health crises in the United States in the past 50 years that are worse than this.
Yeah.
But somehow we're overreacting.
We didn't know. We didn't. I had that same thought this morning.
Right.
If this was SARS or something else, we would have just gone about our lives as usual. This would never have happened. And we would have been aware it was out there, but we would not have shut things down. We would not be running around masking up. We wouldn't be dividing the country over whether people were wearing a mask or not. None of this would have happened. We wouldn't have lost 40 million jobs and spent $6 trillion that we don't have or whatever it is. And so, we could have gone on with life as normal. Yeah. But no, which reminds me, I have to plug, I'm going to be doing this episode called Feardom.
Yeah, there you go.
Connor Boyack, he's a libertarian in Utah. I'm going to see if I can get him on the show again. But to talk about how the government and media plays on our fears. And that will circle us right back around to the topic, because that's one thing, libertarians are never going to do, is they're never going to shut you down and tell you what to wear.
Right.
So to me, that's very appealing right now. And, with this big picture that we're talking about, I see right now, and I'm going to speak to some of my religious friends out there because there's a lot of my listeners that are, but I see right now that we have a war between those that want to control everyone, i.e. Marxists, communists, Antifa, BLM, that group.
And fascists.
Yes, fascists. All those people, I should put them on the left. And then the other side another side that says, no, you're not going to control me, and I'm not interested. And for us religious folks, it's just the war in heaven continuing on earth. Satan wants to control everyone and take all the credit for it. And Christ said, no, you all have agency. And so I think the libertarian thing is attractive to a lot of us because we say, we don't want to be controlled by you. We want to make our own decisions. So I think a lot of people, if they sat and thought about it for a while, would be on board with most of the libertarian planks of the party.
Yeah.
And with the idea behind it of self-determination. And I read through the party platform this morning that I got online.
And it's lp.org/platform. You can check it out yourself.
And again, go through and read it yourselves, people, because I read it myself. And it's fairly general. And most of it, I would say I was probably behind 90% of it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good when you consider where the parties are at right now.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I like is that under 1.0, personal liberty, it says individuals are inherently free to make choices for themselves and must accept responsibility for the consequences of the choices they make. Our support of an individual's right to make choices in life does not mean that we necessarily approve or disapprove of those choices. This part I really like. No individual group or government may rightly initiate force against any other individual group or government. Libertarians reject the notion that groups have inherent rights. We support rights of the smallest minority, the individual. That's the part that spoke to me the most because we hear so much about social justice.
That's all true.
And there's no such thing as social justice. You can only
have justice
for individuals.
Right.
You can't have it for a group.
Right.
So that's the part that spoke to me the most. So having said that, now let's drill down to some of the specifics.
Well, let's do open borders because you already asked that, and then I took us down a tangent.
We're gonna drill down into some of the specifics, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give what I think should happen, and then we'll wrap it up. So
I mean, I know we're sucking down time here, but so I'll try to hit bullet points, and we can drill down as much as we want. I can come back.
All right.
Libertarians believe in free markets, and this ties in with the immigration question. So that applies to labor markets as well. A lot of conservatives, air quotes, say they believe in free markets, but then no. We can't let cheap labor come in because that will make Americans' wages go down. I mean, Laura Ingram's like that. Several people are. Tucker Carlson, I think. Anyway, well, no, we believe in free markets, and if an American company in the United States of America wants to hire someone to do a job for 10 cents less than someone else, they should be able to do that. I mean, whose business is it to tell them they can't do that? The worker would rather get 10 cents less than the other guy than get nothing. So, and the owner the American owner of the American company is going to have a cheaper cost of labor, will make more money, or maybe the price of his product can now go down a little bit. It's just free markets. It applies to labor. Now, that doesn't mean that we should let terrorists into the country. Now, there are some people that are libertarians, small L or big, that are anarchists. They're substantial. It's not most of them, but there's a substantial number. And they would say, let anybody in who wants to come in. But let me go right to the platform itself on this, because it has an important word in it with which I agree. So this is 3.4, because I know you're checking it out there. Free trade and migration. We support the removal of we support the removal of governmental impediments to free trade, like I was just talking about. Political freedom and escape from tyranny demand that individuals not be unreasonably constrained by government in the crossing of political boundaries. Did you catch that word, unreasonably?
Yeah.
So that means if you are a terrorist and you've blown up people before, we can keep you out. And that's my view of that, right? I mean, it's the same thing even within state borders. If a cop knows that you are a fugitive from justice and you drive into Colorado from Nebraska and we see your car, hey, that's this guy who's a fugitive for justice, we can stop him. And so that is the same idea we should apply to international people coming in. If you aren't a threat to the United States, come in. That's it. Come in. Basically, I mean, if you have a job in the United States, hell yeah, come in. You're going to be working for America, for an American company, someone in America making stuff for Americans or whatever. So I don't even care who you're making it for.
As long as you're not a threat, is what you're saying.
Correct. Okay. Right. So I hope that's helpful. A lot of people hate that word, and a substantial number hate the word unreasonably there in that plank. I don't, and it's there, and I agree with it. If you aren't a threat, heck, if you don't have a communicable disease like, COVID, no, I'm kidding. Do they still have leprosy? I don't even know.
I think so, yes.
Something like that. Now then, all right, stay out till you get better. We don't want to bring that into our country.
Right.
So I've got no problem with that. There's going to be anarchists that are yelling at me. I don't care, because I don't live in that world.
So the official party plank is that it's not open borders, but it's just a lot. You let a lot more in than
a lot more open. Think about it in a way of it's just a belief in the markets, in the labor market.
Right. Okay.
That's all it is.
Okay. I like this one. We have one listener who said, balance between maximum freedom and destructive chaos. What's the tipping point, and what's one law that you would never do away with?
All right. First of all, definitions of words are important. What is chaos? We have a pretty big government right now. Are we not experiencing chaos?
Well, you know what? Okay, I'm going to tie that into the other question that is the big one right now with the riots. The riots going on in Portland, Chicago, Minneapolis that we've seen, that we're still seeing. What would be the libertarian stance on that?
That if you hurt someone else, you can be punished for it. Or if you damage someone else's property, you can be put in jail for it. And you'll be responsible for repaying whatever damage you have done. Period.
So it's not an anything goes, go for it.
No.
Which is really odd.
Of course not.
I don't understand these Democrat mayors and governors that are just they're more libertarian than the libertarian that I'm talking to right now, which is just, letting it go. Just go ahead and ravage our cities.
Libertarian is not chaos. Libertarian is not, you get to destroy my stuff. Matter of fact, it's, you do not get to destroy my stuff.
Yeah, that's what
I don't get to destroy your stuff either. So back it up a little bit to a foundational level. The non-aggression principle, which is referenced in that part that you read a moment ago that spoke to you, is that the initiation, another important word on this, the initiation of force is immoral. I can't walk up to you and slap you. That's immoral, right? But if someone is about to hit me, I can stop them from hitting me and use the force necessary to keep that from hitting me. Or more clearly, if someone's pointing a gun at me, they've initiated the aggression, the force. I can defend myself. I can shoot and kill you dead because you are a threat to me by pointing a gun at me. Right? It's the initiation that's immoral, not a response to someone else's force. So apply that to a riot, and if someone is destroying someone else's property, that person must be stopped. All right, you have the right to stop that person from destroying that property or hurting someone else. And the anarchists think that that can be done completely with free markets. You can have free market police, and you can't. Actually, I am very much in favor of private police in most circumstances. So if you own a building, you've got your own private security, you can defend that building against these rioters. And you're going to do a better job of it than we have right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's clear.
Well, you hit it right there. You're not waiting on someone to come out.
Right. So private property and free markets would go a long way to ending the chaos.
Right.
If you are allowed to protect your property, you can stop it, or at least do better than the government is doing now, right? Nobody thinks that I don't think that any particular potential world is going to be a utopia. Right. People are going to try to do bad things. What's the best way to process that? What's the best way to handle it? And the libertarian philosophy is a very good way to handle it. It's clearly better than the one we've got handling it now in many of these cities.
Right. All right. Well, that takes me to another one. And I went to Joe's website and listened to some of her little sound bites. And she said this is in regards to foreign policy.
Yep.
She said she wants one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral.
Right.
And so I thought that was interesting. I have no problem with the armed part.
Yep. Yep.
I've often thought if I were president, one of the first things I would say is I want everyone to own weapons. And I want everyone I would feel like almost like it's their citizens' duty to go ahead and own weapons. Because what other country in the right mind is going to come after us if they know that every single one of us has weapons? I mean, obviously that's not a nuclear deterrent, but
right.
It's a deterrent from forces coming in. But as far as Switzerland, I have a hard time with the idea of America as Switzerland.
Okay.
What's your take on that?
I think the basic idea is, why do we have, whatever the number is, hundreds and hundreds of military bases around the world? Why do we have that? In particular, why do we have all these military bases in Europe protecting a Soviet Union that no longer exists, or protecting against a Soviet Union that no longer exists? I mean, Europe is a first world continent. They can protect themselves. So why are we spending our money to protect them? Mm-hmm. And we can work together when we have common interests, like in World War II. That's fine. That's great. But why do we have bases all over the world? So bring them back is a major part of what I believe Joe is saying. And again, this is Joe Jorgensen, who is the Libertarian nominee for president. Mm-hmm. Joe is short for Josephine, not Joseph. I assume it's for Josephine, actually.
I think
it's J-O.
I've got her little thing here.
Yeah. So the idea is to protect yourself without initiating force somewhere else. And I mean, that's the idea. Now, there are ways to, how do we apply that? There's no way I can tell you how we apply that in any given potential situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we know there's a plane in the sky that's going to run into an airplane, if we know that, run into a building, a plane's going to run into a building. If we know that, okay, we can shoot down that plane. Okay, that is like pointing a gun at somebody. Now, assuming we know that, because a lot of times.
So you're saying self-defense at a national level as well as an individual level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So, but I would still be in favor of foreign aid as a way to advance our interests in other countries, even if we weren't going to send.
Most people are.
So, all right.
We are not. Most foreign aid is a bribe to a corrupt regime in that country, whatever it is. The people rarely get any of that money. It's the corrupt regime.
That is a problem. I teach a class on Pakistan, and we talk about this every single semester, and how we use them for stuff, and the money's not going to the people usually. It goes to buying nukes.
Right. Well, I mean, this happens in the U.S. Even if we're going to build a school, let's say if some government, hey, we're going to build a school for the people. All right. Well, a politically connected contractor is going to get the contract, and he's going to pocket more than he should, because that's how it works with government. There's no competition for it. They say, you're going to build it, I'll give you this much. Then they build a crappy school. That's how this stuff works, right? That's how light rail works in the United States, or the speeding bullet train in California, that boondoggle that they abandoned. Mm-hmm. They abandoned that after spending what, billions of dollars? Yeah. I guarantee you, the labor union heads and the contractors that were working on that while they were working on it all have really nice houses and probably a boat on a lake.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it happens here. It happens in other places. When you take people's money and hand it out, the people handing it out are going to keep most of it.
Yeah.
It's just not a good way to do it. And even if there's an instance where, oh yes, Mother Teresa gave it all away. Okay. That's an exception. And I don't think we gave her any money anyway.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go through a few other specifics here. because I had one friend that asked a couple of really great questions, and I already know your position. Share your position on qualified immunity for police.
We've talked about that on the law with D.K. Williams. Qualified immunity is nonsense. It was a judicially created doctrine. The United States Supreme Court created this out of thin air to protect law enforcement officials from being held financially responsible for violating people's rights. And there is a federal statute that was actually passed, I think in the 1890s, 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, which says if a federal agent violates your constitutional rights, let's say locks you up for no good reason, that's violating your constitutional rights, or beats you up and you've done nothing, right? That's a violation of your constitutional rights by a government agent. If that happens, that federal statute allows you to sue for your damages. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has faced a lot of these, and they said, well, you know what? If the law enforcement officer thought he was doing the right thing, or even if maybe nobody's ever told him that wasn't the right thing to do, if there hasn't been a case already, and I'm really not exaggerating this, if there hasn't already been a case already that says you can't shoot someone asleep on their couch when you burst in, he might not have known that. So he is going to get immunity from that, from a civil lawsuit. So it's nonsense. It's not a partisan issue. There are Democrats and Republicans that oppose this. On the Supreme Court right now, there are some of the progressive, air quotes, and conservative, air quotes, justices that oppose this. I think they will eventually get rid of it because it's their own creation from decades ago.
Yeah.
And I was actually very disappointed because they had the chance to hear a case this term where they could have addressed it.
Yeah.
They could have tossed it out, but they chose not to hear that case. So I was very disappointed in that. Cases will keep coming up though. So hopefully that will eventually get completely struck down.
Right. All right. I think that we've gone over the specifics I wanted to go through. Again, we encourage people to go to the actual website. It's not a lot of reading. It's not difficult reading at all. What was the website? lp.org/platform.
Yep.
And yeah, and I think most people, I mean, some of the stuff is hard for us that are conservative to get our head around, like legalization of prostitution and gambling, and,
right,
and being pro-choice, and even on the abortion
let's
thing.
be clear, the Libertarian platform is they're kind of being wishy-washy on that, on the actual platform. It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't say we're pro-choice.
Right.
That's the effect of it.
It is. I came away with that.
That's the effect of it.
Yeah.
It says the government shouldn't be involved in that decision. So that might be a weasel way out of it. And let me touch on this quickly because we mentioned the non-aggression principle, and it gives you a good structure for solving a lot of policy problems. It doesn't on abortion. And here's why. Because if I apply the non-aggression principle to the mother, I cannot tell her what she's going to do at all. Right? But if I apply it to the fetus, right? If that fetus gets the benefit of the non-aggression principle, we can't do anything to it. We cannot aggress against it. Right. So the question is, to whom do you apply the non-aggression principle? The non-aggression principle doesn't tell you to whom to apply it to. It just says that's the principle. Yeah. So that's the problem. There are a lot of pro-life libertarians. They just apply that principle to the unborn and not to the mother. Anyway, that's the foundational dispute there among libertarians, just like it is everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, well, and it is. It's a hard thing because I was chatting with a few of my libertarian friends a while back about that, and we all agreed that we're pro-life, but applying, holding, how to stop it is the hard part. Yeah, because we want to be realistic, and we also, I mean, to me, the right of the baby supersedes the right of the mom. But what does that mean?
A lot of people agree.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means. It's not an easy issue. So, all right. So, I think a lot of us who have identified as conservative most of our life, and I've talking to more and more people are starting to add libertarian to that. There's like to say conservative / libertarian. A lot of us are starting that direction. And I feel like the way the world is going right now, it is kind of lining up because here comes communism again. Just when you think it's gone to sleep, it comes back. And it's coming back again in the form of BLM, Antifa.
The organization. We talked about that earlier. Not the idea.
Right, exactly. And I know, and I did a whole episode on this, people, because I know a lot of people like to hashtag Black Lives Matter, and they don't know what the problem I have with it is that it can be mistaken for the organization, which is Marxist. And correct. I think most people cannot separate the two in their mind. And so I don't want people going to the organization and donating to them.
No, it shouldn't.
Thinking that they are forwarding equality for
correct.
Black people, because they're not.
Right.
That's not what that organization is about.
Right. No.
So go back to my episode if you want to know what the organization is about. That's why I would rather see equal justice for all hashtags, or some other hashtags that actually say what you're trying to say. Because especially those of us who do have a lot of libertarian viewpoints believe that we are all created equal. And so we are for, individual rights, every individual.
Right.
But anyway, so it feels to me like we have this, again, battle where we have one side that wants to control everything and wants to make everything equal by government force. And then we have the other side that's saying, no, we want to have individual liberty. And so that seems to be the battle that's going on right now. And but the Republicans are on the same side as the progressives. Well, you can make that argument because a different way. Or like a slower train, maybe. Right. But the Democrats have definitely pulled very hard to the left right now. Let's say progressives. Okay. Because they're not all Democrats. But the Democrat platform is very much about white privilege and things like that. It's shifting, interestingly, in that direction. So let's just say we've got statists or big government or communists that are pulling in that direction. And then we have other people saying, I don't want to go in that direction. And there's a lot of us that say, I don't know what I want. Right. And the libertarian platform covers a lot of what we feel or what we think or what our ideology is. And so I'm going to go into my own Annette fantasy now and see what I want. And this is going to combine. Is this going to be PG? Of course. All right. I did an episode not long ago with a gentleman that wrote a book about the death of the two-party system, and he sees where he feels like the parties are going in the future. And so I'm going to take my idea and combine it with his idea and say what I would like to see. Mm-hmm. Because one of his ideas is that someone comes in and basically takes over one of the major parties and recreates it in their image. Kind of like Trump. Well, yeah, but in a good way. William Jennings Bryan did this eons ago. I would say you've got to read the book. I don't have it in front of me. The Death of the Two-Party System. Yeah, something like that. I'll check it out. All right, it's great. It's an awesome book. Especially if nothing else, it's 90% history of the two parties, and it's fascinating. It's just fascinating. But so what I kind of visualize happening is a charismatic, in a good way, not just a, snowing us kind of way, individual that comes forward who is entirely ethical and has a libertarian viewpoint and has a libertarian vision and comes in and basically takes over the Republican Party and makes it over in his or her image as a more libertarian party, and that people jump on board and get behind that. And this person sells the country, or at least the country that's already leaning this way, on their vision of what they want the Republican Party to be. You could use either party, but right now the Democrat Party, I feel so far off into the communist land that I don't see it happening. But I don't care if the D's want that to happen. Either way, someone comes in and takes over a party and says, this is what we want, and basically rewrites all the planks to reflect a much, much more libertarian party. And so, and then they get, the vote, bloody, we move on, and everything's all good. So that's my fantasy of what I would like to see. I don't know an individual like that offhand, but someone that's sort of an Elon Musk-ish, where they have some, obviously he's not a totally free market guy either. He's got some. Oh, he takes a lot of government subsidies, yeah. Yes, exactly. But someone with a lot of vision and that can get a lot of traction and that thinks outside of the box and tech savvy would be really nice since we have.
He's got a lot of good things, but he smokes weed, so I don't know if you can vote for him.
You know what? I could care less about that. Smokes weed or gets behind the rioters. I don't know. Let's see. But so anyway, that's where I would like to see it go. And so that's where I'm going to wrap this up. Do you have any final comments that you want to make about?
Thank you again for having me. I always enjoy it. The left versus right discussion that we all have, it's all kind of drilled into us, to me is not important. To me, it's a distraction. And people will argue about, oh, that's not socialist, that's fascist. Oh, no, it's not fascist, that's socialist, or whatever. That's a tangent. I do not care. Because like you were talking about, it's totalitarian.
Right.
I don't care what flavor it is.
Right.
Communism is totalitarian. Socialism is totalitarianism. Fascism is totalitarian. Don't care about the flavor. Mm-hmm. I oppose authoritarianism, totalitarianism. I am in favor of individual freedom. Yeah. So left versus right, I mean, it's almost a cliche in the libertarian community, but if there's a boot on your neck, it doesn't matter if it's a left boot or a right boot.
Right.
We want the boots gone off of everyone's necks. So,
the left-right thing is an artificial construct anyway.
Yes.
And it's interesting. The book actually, which I'll link to because I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Talks about where that even came from and why it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So good. I'm glad you said that. So, and I hope more people will adopt that idea. It's not the state, or it's not right versus left. It's the state versus you. That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
So
state versus
hope people keep that in mind.
Right.
That's basically what the Libertarian Party is about. By voting for a system that we don't think is working. And if you think it's working, awesome. I'm not, you keep doing you, right? Mm-hmm. But if you see a problem with it, keep feeding it isn't going to change it.
Right.
So we encourage people that think it's a problem to do something else. Hey, if you got any other ideas, awesome. Do something else. Don't feed it. Don't feed the beast you're trying to kill, right? And voting for either Trump or Biden is feeding that beast. So we're not going to do that. If we get destroyed, it's not going to be with our permission. We're going to be kicking and fighting against it. So we're not going to sign on and get in the boxcar. You're going to have to push us and maybe shoot us before we even get into it. We're not going to cooperate with what is going on. We're going to fight it, even if it's just to vote against it. That it's symbolic. Absolutely. Everyone's vote's symbolic. Your vote ain't going to change the election. Your vote is something that belongs to you. You get to express your beliefs with that vote. You're not going to change the election. You're not. But you get to make your statement that way. And we believe we're making that statement. And it's an important statement to make. Again, if you're in the middle of the Overton window, you're fine. If you want to push it, you need to do something to push it. And that's how we look at it. And again, I'm just speaking for myself when I say we. I'm speaking for myself, no longer an official at any level with the Libertarian Party. I'm not a part of any campaign, not part of Joe's campaign. I'm just a guy at this point who believes in this philosophy. That's just me.
Well, you're a guy that made a really good case, and you're a guy that had a really great discussion. So I really appreciate that. I want to hear from the listeners out there. Let us know what you think about this, either on AnnetteTalks.com or on Facebook.com/AnnetteTalks, or you can find my personal Facebook page if you want, which is Annette Mashler-Bybee. And you can thank you. You can find DK at The Law with DK Williams on Speak Easy Ideas, or on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again?
Twitter is at The Law DKW.
All right.
Holla at me. It's not like I'm not Kim Kardashian. I don't get 10,000. So if you holla at me, I'll holla back.
Same here. I will personally respond to you if you reach out to me on YouTube, or I'm also on Twitter. I don't do much on there, but you can find me pretty much anywhere. If you Google Annette Talks or Annette Bybee, you'll find me.
And if Facebook's your thing, not Twitter, I'm there too. It's a Facebook page, The Law with DK Williams, the whole thing.
Right. So you Google The Law with DK Williams and you'll find me as well.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much,
thank you.
DK. Again, you can find this podcast on AnnetteTalks.com, iTunes, Stitcher, etc., or on my page, Annette Talks. I already said that. YouTube.com/Annette Talks. And I appreciate everyone listening, and come back again. Let us know what you think. Oh, DK's blowing kisses. I think it's
That was to everyone. That was to the internet.
That was lovely, DK. All right. Thank you for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness.